China in 1953 was similar to the United Kingdom in about 1650. It was, first of all, had been badly affected by the Japanese War, by its civil war, and was ravaged by poverty, by illiteracy. It was a country without roads. The railway links were very few and far between, and they had none of the modern aspects of a state, none at all. So they were trying to, the 48 group people as they became, were trying to bring some reason and some organisation into this whole process. They were dealing with Chinese who themselves were trying to organise what they had a vision of, which was good quality export goods at reasonable prices, which was the icebreaker mission. It was a culmination of a series of initiatives, probably set off by the start of the Cold War and by those who felt that trade was an avenue to peace and harmony, and that the Cold War could start off a road to conflict and confrontation. That was the beginning of the China that he saw, a China which for hundreds of years had been decimated by all forms of illnesses, all forms of smallpox, cholera, everything was swept through China. The people lived in poverty. It was a country which, with an average life expectancy of about 27. China's foreign trade had fallen apart completely during the Japanese War, the Civil War, the Second World War. Left the country ravaged, the lines of trade destroyed, and familiarity between manufacturers and suppliers in China and users in the outside world just didn't exist. And many of those things had to be recreated anyway inside China. We're dealing with a world that was getting ready for a confrontation with the Soviet Union and its allies. At that time, we're dealing with a period, the McCarthy trials were beginning in America, the Korean War was going on. There were many who viewed these people as traitors, as people who were going to places that no good British man would go to. So they had a lot of opposition. They also had, because of the British recognition of history taking its time and things moving on, a recognition in many leading circles in Britain that they were opening up a door which would be of great value and use to the UK. So on the one hand, you had people inside Britain who were concerned about the American agenda. On the other hand, you had those who had a long understanding of China, seeing it as different from Russia, and wanting to back this opening up of a relationship. And it was done at first, of course, in this very unofficial way. It was only later it became possible to open up a more official relationship. That had to wait for Nixon's visit to China. The Chinese were interested only in rebuilding their country. They had no agenda. They didn't want any favours. They didn't want organisations formed to infiltrate the trade unions or any of that kind of stuff at all. They were concerned only about building their own country. They wanted to buy goods and they wanted to sell goods for the purpose of building their country. The British have long had a tradition of going out and finding new markets and new places to source goods and new places to make goods and new places to sell them. And so the trip to China by British business people was not something which was out of the ordinary. It was, the British have always had that tradition of going to new places. The British have a reputation for being sound, for being honest, for being reliable, and for knowing what they're doing, for being professional. If the Chinese were looking for the people in the Western world who were going to help them reopen their trade lines, nobody better than the British. The thing about the 48 group that was really interesting was they were a group of thinkers. They weren't just out there to do a contract to move on. They would spend a lot of time understanding what was going on in China. They used to have lots of meetings where the Chinese would explain to them what they were doing, why they were doing it, and how they were doing it. It's the thinking, it's the anticipating, it's the extrapolating. It's reading what the Chinese have to say and understanding what it really means. The Chinese corporations are going to globalise at a very fast rate. They will be all over the world. At the same time, they recognise that world corporations are going to come into China and play an active role in the Chinese market. They need that. They need these companies to come in and show what level of efficiency, what level of product professionalism, all the things that are the hallmarks of a successful international corporation they want in China, and they want their companies to have to compete with it. They're going to protect their companies. They're going to give them as long as they can to incubate them and turn them into world-class corporations. The images of China today are not of people pulling carts. They're not of people with bound feet, which was the images of 50 years ago. Today the images of China are of skyscrapers, of new buildings, new roads, new railways, of a young population enjoying the latest in music and the latest in entertainment. The image of China has changed. People in business are still not sure today how real the prospect of the China market is. They're going to quadruple their economy in the next 18 years. They're going to quadruple their foreign trade in the next 18 years. The level of investment in China is now greater than that into the United States. What is much more interesting is they know what they're going to do and they know how they're going to get there. They know what it requires. They will reorganize their industrial economy over the next 5 to 7 years in a way that even people in the West do not begin to understand. That's what the icebreakers have given us. The opportunity to be the first through the door. The opportunity to be the ones who are trusted. The opportunity to be the ones who can capitalize on the opportunities. The message for me about this is that 50 years ago, a group of businessmen and women took the risk to travel 7,000 miles to understand the visions of a fledgling country. And great prosperity has been built on that work. We can do that again and take the time now to understand what is going to happen over the next 50 years in China.